The session right now is focused on climate conscious or climate conscious India. And two very important words, I think very heavy words as well, which will define the next 25 years or 30 years, which we are looking at. How many people, just to get a flavor of the audience, how many people understand carbon footprinting? Because Ashwarya spoke about the carbon footprinting or carbon emissions. So just to get an audience dipstick poll, how many people understand carbon footprinting, carbon emissions? Okay, cool. And how many people understand consciousness? Okay, excellent. I think most of us do. So climate conscious, hopefully a very interesting topic and session. So I'll just set the tone in terms of, what consciousness means to all of us. I'll start with myself. So you could be aware, you could be alert. That's a simple form of being conscious. However, if you look at it in a more holistic manner, consciousness could define the DNA of our being, how we feel, how we work, what drives us, the holistic view of the world which we have, something which drives us, the passion, the reason why we are here today on a hot, sunny evening, and it's just end of March. So that could define the way consciousness appeals to all of us. In a way, the ikigai, or the reason for existence and the purpose we look at in life, that could also be a way of defining consciousness. And when it comes to climate, how many of us are aware about the NDCs and the 1.5 degrees and the buzzwords which come around sustainability and climate? Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, quite a few. Excellent. So just to put things in perspective when it comes to climate, we're looking at an investment which we have never ever witnessed in the last 100 years since the industrialization age. We're looking at about $6 to $8 trillion annually for the climate resilience and climate action globally. India, if you were to look at, we are looking at a minimum investment of about $250 billion for the next 5 years. Post 2030, this increases. So that's the scale. If you look at climate change, the main impact is extreme weather events. And you can already see that Feb end, we have started having heat waves in India, which was never the case. 2024 was the hottest year on the planet. Every month reached the 1.5 degree limit which we have set. When it comes to extreme weather events, we have had fires in LA, I think all of us are aware of. But how many of us are aware of fires in India in the last month or so? How many of us are aware of this? So you can just see that in February we think about a heat wave which was never possible. So that's the context setting for today's talk at the next 45 minutes. And I'm glad that we have a very interesting panel curated by the AndPurpose team, different stakeholders, different domains, and tons of experience on this dais. So I'll kick off the discussion with one simple thing. We'll kick off with Shalini in terms of one line and a couple of lines in terms of her experience, her background. She's been in this for 20 years. I think if you want to discover the reality, it's her. When I spoke to her, she spoke about the key part of credibility and integrity. And also a couple of lines in terms of your perspective on climate consciousness. Thanks.
Thanks, Ramik. Hi everyone, I'm just going to continue with the dipstick mode. How many people are from Delhi here today? Okay, and obviously I'm guessing everybody lives in Delhi. How many of you know that till 40 years ago, just 8 kilometers from where we are, boating, fishing, swimming, a very thriving, outdoor life was on, which was prevalent in the city. How many of us know that? Okay, not too many. So I discovered this 6 years ago, when I was researching climate change in Delhi for People's Archive of Rural India. It was a nationwide coverage of climate change that we did across geographies and communities impacted. And so my research began. So I'm 44 years old. I'm born and brought up in Delhi, and I don't live too far from here. I live just close by. And so I discovered all this that I just mentioned to you in a history book. And I felt like I was reading science fiction. I couldn't imagine that a city like Delhi, which claims to have a river, the Yamuna, is today what it is. And this came up in our conversation with Ramneek, and I was sharing with him that, and just one statistic puts it in perspective, at least it put it in perspective for me. Of course, there was a 6 months to a 1 year of research and reporting on the ground, which went into the the work that I did, which is that the Yamuna is 1,376 kilometers long. Starts from Uttarakhand, ends in UP. It passes through several states in between. Just 22 kilometers or 1.6% of the Yamuna goes through Delhi, NCT, and that 1.6% causes 76% of the entire pollution in the river. So that one statistic just put it, just sort of summed it up for me. So that is one. The other is that the Yamuna floodplains, which are 97 square kilometers in terms of area, and or rather in terms of Delhi's area, it would be 6.5% of the entire area of Delhi. But those floodplains are key to maintaining the city's thermostat, right? If you are the July 2023 floods that we saw was a man-made disaster. It could have been avoided had several factors been in place. I won't get into that right now. But the point is that the floodplains allow the water to settle down. When there is excess rain, they absorb the water, recharge the groundwater, all of that. So concretizing the floodplains is a huge problem. You're messing with the thermostat, with the entire climate of the city. And I'm just going to share one more statistic, and then we can take it further. Of course, Yamuna supplies 60% of the drinking water in Delhi. This is something that we know. And I was very inspired by the young girl who recited a poem, Priyanshi, right? Is she here? And she spoke about heat waves, or how the city is burning up. And I'm sorry to give you another grim statistic, but in 1960 in Delhi, we had 178 days of temperature when it was 32 degrees. In 2019, this went up to 205 days. And by the end of this century, we would be looking at over 8 months if we continue with the way things are. And one last thing I'm going to say here is that between 1993 till current day, between 1,500 to 3,100 crores has been spent on cleaning the Yamuna. And a farmer's question to me was, if this much money has been spent, why isn't the Yamuna clean today?
Thanks, Shalini, for the statistics and the overview. Over to you, Shalu, in terms of you lead a lot of programs at CEW, and you spent quite some time in terms of primary research in various climate verticals. So your small brief and also your take on climate consciousness.
Thanks for Nick, and thank you AndPurpose for having us here. This is the first time I'm engaging with AndPurpose, and it's a brilliant forum, so very nice.
Can you hear me now? Yes, I should have watched for that echo. Hello everyone again, I'm Shalu Agrawal. I currently work with Council on Energy, Environment and Water. We are a policy research think tank headquartered in Delhi, and I work as director of programs there with different research programs, and one of our theory of changes create evidence-based insights which can influence government policies and programs towards sustainability action. And while the mic was not on, I was just thanking AndPurpose for curating this discussion, because it's a very interesting set of people, and going with Ranmeek's question and the responses to them, it seems it's a very informed set of group and people who already are working on the issues or are aware. And so when we come to the question of what is climate consciousness, and what is climate conscious India, and the fact that people in Delhi, of course, is a very different kind of microcosm of India. It doesn't really, reflect the average India. especially because I come from a small town, Mathura. And as a researcher, then I like to look at, okay, what do the statistics say about, are Indians already conscious of climate change, and who's acting and who's not. And and here, I mean, there's been a latest research by Mint and DIU Analytics, and I was quite pleased to note that as per their All India survey, more than 95% Indians are aware of the fact that the weather is changing and the various ways in which they associate that climate change is happening is the heat is rising, rainfall patterns are changing, frequency of droughts and floods is changing. So it seems that it's been a lived experience, and all Indians across the country are able to feel the impact, and at least 50% said that their lives have been significantly impacted by the changing climate already. And this is very different from the narrative we hear from Western world, where we see a lot of climate denial, right? And I was very pleasantly surprised, and the fact that almost 50% also say that this is 70% said this is because of human activities. Again, very different from the responses you get in other countries. And 50% said that every citizen must act to solve for this problem. And of course, 84% said that government needs to act even more. So I think that's an amazing baseline to work with. I mean, when we were talking, I was using statistics from 2012, and I looked up, has there been latest research? So it seemed over the last 10, 15 years, because of the changing situations and more awareness, social media, I think our citizenry is quite prepared to actually act. And the big question is, do they have the right kind of information to act? And in the survey, they also ask you, what are you doing? And a lot of people give examples of what are they doing. But then, are those actions enough? And that is where we need to talk more.
Thanks, Shalu, for bringing that context of stats and perspective. Over to you, Vivek. Why don't you continue the discussion on your core work? He's worked across geographies and countries, and sustainable urbanization as a core and resource efficiency. So, what is your take on climate consciousness?
Thanks, Ramnik. So, my name is Vivek, and I'm working as an advisor in GIZ India. So GIZ is German Development Agency, and we work across around 120 countries, working closely with the state, city and national governments on different aspects of urbanization, energy, mobility projects, basically development sector organization, and we look into different angles including climate change and circular economy, and I'm part of the climate change and circular economy team. So just before going into it, I would like to, since I was also introduced as a Alexander von Humboldt fellow, so Alexander von Humboldt is a big geographer, historian, researcher from Germany, and during 1800s he was one of the persons who already mentioned that sustainability is something that should be core of any kind of discourse, because in the future times there will be challenges, and timber felling was one of the common things happening in Europe, and he was one of the persons who advocated that this kind of timber felling would affect the future. So starting with the question of climate consciousness, I would like to point that consciousness is a big question, as Ramnik was pointing out at the beginning, and statistics that all of you provided. Consciousness comes at a big question, and it comes with a big cost also. How do we really think about our interventions, our actions really affect a different set of stakeholders? For example, as per the statistics in UN, by 2050 we will have 66% of people living in the cities, and all the statistics of the cities, which is quite alarming. But one of the major things is consciousness with regard to our consumption on materials, consumption of energy. So that's where the conscious approach is needed. And when we talk about climate conscious approach, it is more about how do we think on efficient use, and a lot of discussions are going on the resource efficient approach. And I am currently representing a project which is called European Union India Resource Efficiency and Circular Economy Initiative, where we are trying to build partnerships on resource efficiency and circular economy. Why this resource efficiency and circular economy crucial one for climate conscious approaches? Because a lot of our challenges comes by the resource extraction and usages. So conscious approach primarily centers upon the consumption patterns, our production patterns, how our cities are growing, and this has a major impact on our climate change actions. And as the statistics are quite alarming, I'm not going to stress again on that. But when we talk about consciousness comes in the entire value chain. You were mentioning about the life cycle thoughts also. Carbon footprint, somebody was stressing earlier also. So across life cycle of things that we design, across the life cycle of products that we consume, it's quite important. And I would like to discuss further during the due course of our panel today, but I will reserve myself for now and hand it back to you, Ramni.
Thanks, Vivek. Over to you, Gaurang. Gaurang is part of the founder's office at Varaha, and just for a heads up to people who don't know Varaha, they are into carbon removal, working primarily with smallholder farmers and primarily in the global south. So over to you, Gaurang, in terms of your experience at Varaha and earlier a bit, and also about two-liner on climate consciousness, and then we can kick off the main panel. Thanks.
Sure, thank you so much. So I'm Gaurang. I lead the founder's office at Varaha. Varaha is a Series A stage carbon removal startup that essentially partners with smallholder farmers to introduce sustainable practices that can reduce and remove carbon emissions. And we have an entire technology stack developed in-house to validate and quantify the carbon that we're taking out. And 1 ton of carbon is 1 carbon credit. Global corporations that have carbon footprints that they want to offset can then purchase these credits from us. And most of the money from that goes back to the farmers. Prior to this, I was a strategy consultant at Dalberg Advisors working on climate, studied political science. On the question of climate consciousness, for us and for me, it's about choices. And it's about, we're armed with all these very alarming statistics on climate change, and it seems that people do realize in India, right? And that's also when we talk to smallholder farmers, they're at the forefront of feeling the impacts. In cities, we're still shielded to a very large extent. So for us, it's about how do we shift farmers from practices which have become business as usual or traditional, but there are certain practices we can introduce that are not only better for the climate but also for soil health, productivity. Like the soil organic carbon in India, the water levels are depleting. So how can we restore that in a way that also benefits the farmers and climate? So that's my brief answer. It's about choices and empowering farmers to make these choices.
Thanks, Gaurang, for the crisp one. I think it's a nice segue to what we have for Shalini in terms of her work around the vulnerable communities. And the dichotomy is that the most vulnerable communities on the planet have no role in the carbon footprint. In fact, the top 1% on the planet have already exhausted their carbon emissions in the first 10 days of 2025. So I think Aishwarya mentioned about carbon emissions being the core, not just the revenue. So in fact, they are in debt of all the other citizens of the planet. So taking that as a core point, could you elaborate on your work and the impact which climate change is happening on these communities?
Sure, thank you. So 2019, I began researching on climate change in Delhi. I had, at that time, I've been a journalist who's covered gender and environment issues and culture and all of that. I did not know where to start on climate change because it seemed like such a complex subject, with so many, all sorts of things happening. So I had 4 keywords: climate change, Yamuna, farmers, fishermen. Literally those 4 keywords is what I began with. And so we looked at I looked at the communities in Delhi. First of all, I was shocked to know that there are farmers and fishermen in Delhi. I mean, this is a city, urban, right? Like, who hears of, fishermen? Where? So anyway, so on research, there are no official statistics on how many farmers and fishermen were there during independence and to what they are now. So I'm giving you very rough approximate figures, which is in 1947, about 35% of Delhi was rural, which is down to about 2.5 or less, 2.5% or less now. And during independence, if we had, say, about 1,000 fishermen, fisher folk living in Delhi, fishing off the Yamuna for their livelihoods, earning a living off the river and all of that, there are less than 100 today. So the reason why fisher folk leave a river is if it's dead, and a river is dead if the river is dead, the fish are dead, hence the fisher folk can't earn anything from it, and hence their livelihoods, get decimated. So it took me 6 months to locate, some of the remaining people on the banks of the Yamuna. I went several times, managed to find a few people. Many of them were migrant fisher folk from West Bengal and other places, who were also supplementing their income through selling momos in Noida and kathi rolls and all of that. But they were quite poetic about the life of a fisherman, just sitting on the boat and enjoying a smoke in between his fishing expedition. So you know that the man is closely tied to what he does when he is so passionate and poetic about it. And similarly was with this farmer Shiv Shankar, who lives near the Red Fort at Bela Estate, and there's a video, if you guys are interested. It's a 1.5 minute video where he just summarizes climate change in his own words, very simply put. And he says, after saying all of what he's had to say and share, he said that, आने वाले समय में इंसान ना झगड़े से मरेगा, ना रगड़े से मरेगा तो भूख और प्यास से. कि अगर पानी नहीं होगा तो आप खाना कैसे, how are you going to grow crops, and if you're not going to grow crops, where is your food going to come from? So my point is that the wisdom of the people who live closest to the elements, the most vulnerable communities who are the most impacted by climate change, are the ones who could tell me exactly how things had unfolded over the several decades that they've sort of been working, and then to see their livelihoods being decimated with the kind of there are several multi-factors at play. I could get into it, but that would be a really long discussion, but I'm open to more questions.
Thanks, Shalini. Can we have a bit of light? I think this is such time that people could fall asleep. We need coffee and we need a lot of caffeine, so a bit of light will help. Over to you, Shalu. So you've been leading a lot of programs, and there is enough evidence which you are sitting on in terms of how India is transitioning to renewables, and energy independence is the core for the country. So taking into account the rooftop solar scheme, which I think is an integral part of India's transition, we're looking at a 500 gigawatt of renewable capacity by 2030. What are the factors which you think can make it into a citizens' movement? So apart from just money and policy, I think what works in India is that we are emotional, and when community comes together, a lot can be achieved in a much lesser time. So your perspectives, especially with the kind of research you have conducted, and I was reading on your LinkedIn about the 15,000 households that in the survey you did. So just an overview and your thoughts there. Thanks.
Thanks, Ramit. I'll just pick from the sort of thread that I left in the previous question, which is we know that Indians are pretty aware of the climate change, they are affected by it, and they're looking for solutions, and that's how I like to believe. And we've also seen that governments both at the center and the state level are also looking for frameworks that will help them include community into the movement. And in fact, like the announcement of the Mission Life 2 years back was also in the same vein, that it has to be a community movement. And last year the government of India announced PM Surya Ghar scheme, which was a very ambitious program because it aims to sort of support 10 million households to adopt rooftop solar on their roofs. Now, a question is why this matters and how can people be engaged in actually making this a success. This matters because if we don't transition towards clean energy, we will end up burning more coal, and that comes back to us in the form of bad air pollution and of course various environmental issues related to use of coal in the power plants. And we are constantly trying to do that. And the roofs matter because we don't, we need to use our land and various surfaces as optimally possible. And rooftops, as per CW's research, I mean, we did the survey, we asked people for what is the size of roof available. There's been a lot of satellite-based research which indicates, there's a huge potential to cover our roofs with rooftop. So technically 500 gigawatts of energy, which is, or power capacity, which is more than our total installed power capacity at the moment, could be installed if we were to cover all the roofs with the rooftop solar. Now, the economic potential is less at the moment because it's linked to how much energy people consume right now or how much they want to pay, which still is 100 gigawatt. And right now we have around 16 gigawatt, or very small fraction of it, which has been captured. And this is where the importance of this scheme comes, which provides subsidy support for the citizens. But then there are challenges, and this is where the consciousness comes back. Whether citizens know about what is the right kind of technology, whether they trust the technology, whether they trust the vendors, whether they know that once you adopt the technology, it's not just like install and forget, but you have to actively engage with the technology, clean the panels, or at least have someone so that you can generate, because you are really becoming a prosumer rather than just consuming. You are producing energy and you are also feeding into the grid. And of course, there are, it's like a ladder of consciousness, and there are challenges. And as CW is working with a few state governments like Uttarakhand and Madhya Pradesh, where we are supporting them, in curating targeted communication campaigns and training and capacity building workshops for both consumers as well as the people who help consumers adopt the technology, like discoms and vendors. And and we are also looking to partner with people who understand the consumer pulse better than us. We are researchers, we don't often understand it. And for instance, we join hands with Mati Bani folk song group band to curate, to produce a song on Solar Kagola. We have we are doing Nukkad Nataks with the RWAs. We have a solar van that goes. So I think it's a combination of different things and a lot of stakeholders that have to come together to help make it a citizens movement, because people are looking for the right kind of information, and the ecosystem will take time to develop because even the technology providers are new people, right? They've also taken up this business for the first time. So there'll be, of course, teething issues, there'll be trials and errors, but I think we are speeding up.
Thanks, Shalu. I think the takeaway has been on the consumer part, that you are a producer of energy. I think that's a big one for India, and the context. Over to you, Vivek. Continuing with her dialogue on energy. So the urban transition. Globally, 2 billion people shifting to cities by 2050. India is not very far behind. India will be having about 100 million people moving to cities in the next 10 years. Normally we could associate wealth with well-being, but that's not the case in cities. Well-being and livability is a big challenge if you look at Delhi NCR. I see it in Gurgaon, I see it in Delhi. So your work, your experience globally, how do you make cities livable? How do you ensure that circular economy principles are actually synergized with how the cities work to create a better living ecosystem in cities? So your take there. Thanks.
Thanks, Ramni. So just before starting that, one point that Shalini mentioned about the knowledge of fishing community, because that's again an experience that would like to share that. So we work in around 26, 28 states in India as GIZ, and considering working with the communities, it's really matters because sometimes they are much more informed than the researchers and much development practitioners as we go on ground. Because simple example, fishing community again, they are one of the most vulnerable communities, but at the same time much more informed as well. Because again, this is also connected to the livability in cities. Because I would like to stress on the waste management as one of the key areas. So we were interacting with the fishing community in the coast of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and they started teaching us about the microplastics issue. So they have that much granular knowledge on what is happening and what is affecting their catch, what is affecting their livelihood. Now coming on to the knowledge that the communities across India it's quite commendable. And when we look at the livability aspect in not even in cities across India, because circular economy is something that I would like to stress over here, because a lot of our actions are really circular in the country. We are really one of the countries in the world which adopted circular economy unknowingly, because many of our practices are really circular in nature. But at the same time, one thing that enforces the livability is transitioning from the concept of waste management to a thought of resource management, because this is all interlinked. Many times we think that we can manage waste and live easily in the city, but when we start looking at the intrinsic value within the products that we waste in a city, the livable component actually gathers much more importance and value. Across the globe, again looking at different sectors, plastics, textiles, electronic waste, there are a lot of waste streams that come from our cities and bothering us. Even Delhi waste management is a major issue, which we all know. But how do we really address this thought process is a question. And it's more about how we approach the issue in a multi-stakeholder partnership and multi-faceted approach that's much more needed. And global experiences, for example, again, looking at built environment, the construction sector itself. So we construct a lot, but at the same time, we forget how to extract the valuable materials which can really aid us in rebuilding our infrastructure. Examples are there in Europe, where buildings which were demolished were really salvaged to extract resources and rebuild construction, the buildings, etc. So it's more about the mentality on how we look at managing resources in a city, which really influences the livability component. And India has a huge potential when it comes into looking at circular economy approaches, because circularity across the globe. So there was the report from Circle Economy, which is a global think tank which addresses circularity, and it is mentioning that the circularity is going down globally as the year progresses. This is because we start focusing only on extracting virgin materials and considering the geopolitical scenario which is going around, which really affects the aspects on resource efficiency and circularity. So livability becomes as a subset of different aspects like resource efficiency and circular economy. I would like to summarize it in that way. And when you want to have a sustainable living atmosphere, a different approach involving all these stakeholders in the value chain is really crucial. And yeah, I'll reserve it for that moment.
Thanks, Vivek. Thanks for outlining that. Over to you, Gaurang. So we spoke a bit about carbon credits and also about the carbon emissions. So globally, approximately 60 gigatons is what the carbon emissions are. 1 gigaton is about 1 billion tons. So that's what leads to global warming, and that leads to climate change. And that's the reason we're talking about extreme weather events, especially the heat waves which we are seeing. So Varaha is one of the leaders. And what is it that you do at Varaha when it comes to engagement with farmers? How are you building capacity? How are you engaging with them? Are you conducting any workshops? Or how do you ensure that smallholder farmers are brought into the ecosystem? And you said that majority of the revenues goes to them. So in a nutshell, how does it pan out?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So Varaha's model is that we partner with organizations that have been working with the farmers since many years. So these can be NGOs, farmer cooperative groups, agribusinesses as well. And we work with them. So they're the ones who hold a lot of the relationships with the farmers. They're already trusted by the farmers. And we create modules, workshops, materials, etc. to introduce the farmers to additional practices that they can implement on their farms. So we hold what are called the local stakeholder consultations, which happen at the district level, they happen at the block level, they happen at the village level, where we have Varaha's own field team. We have around 80 people right now who are on the ground at any given time, and with the staff of the implementation partner, where we do demonstrations of the equipment, machinery, answer any questions, etc. Then we've developed a customized mobile application where the surveyors who work at the NGO or the agribusiness, they can go to the farmer, and there's certain data that's required to develop the carbon project and bring the farmer on board. So the land boundaries of the farm, for example. So we collect that data and we sign an agreement with the farmer where we've educated the farmer, and with their free and informed consent, they agree to take part in the carbon project. They can, of course, at any time, if they would like, they can stop doing the practice. There's nobody forcing them to do anything, right? So we do all of this. Then once the farmers actually doing the practice on the ground, we have a team of remote sensing geospatial scientists who, with the help of machine learning models that we've trained, using data from the ground, they validate that the farmer is doing the practice, and if so, for how long, is it happening properly. We send people on the ground to check this as well. So the farmers who then pass these validation checks, they are the ones who are eligible for carbon credits. Then we have a team of scientists who do the quantification. This is different for different kinds of projects, but it combines scientific modeling, machine learning, computer vision, etc. So we do the entire quantification also in-house. The project gets audited by a neutral third party, and then once the credits are generated on the leading carbon registries like Vera, etc., we do the entire documentation, etc. Then the credits can be sold. They can be sold in the forward market, in the spot market as well. And the revenue that comes, we have an agreement with the partner and with the farmer how the profits are going to be shared. So that's when we give benefits back to the farmer. We also, of course, provide them with like biochar, for example, from our projects, or enhanced rock weathering. We give them the basalt powder, which acts as a bio input as well. So there are all of those benefits as well.
Great, excellent. So in the interest of time, I have a lot of questions, but I will go to the second round for 1 minute each. So we have 1 minute to answer, it's like a rapid fire. So your take in terms of how your company is working with Google. So your take on global CSOs moving towards carbon removal, 1 minute.
Yeah, so our take is that in 2018, this is when Microsoft, Meta, etc. came out and made these big commitments of carbon removal. They formed coalitions to buy credits at large scale. And the market has seen a shift since then, because before that it was largely avoidance, low quality, low permanence credits. Since 2018, the leading buyers want premium, high quality, traceable, and more expensive credits. They're the market leaders, they're the ones building the market. India is catching up to that, and our conviction is that soil organic carbon or other carbon removal technologies which can remove carbon for up to 10,000 plus years, that's the future, and that's where we are investing our efforts in as well.
Awesome, thanks Gaurav. Over to you, Shalu. So investing in the future, investing in the next gen. So how do you look at schools? How do you look at, like Sweden kicked off a program wherein they are educating the school children to segregate waste, and they are creating energy out of waste. So couple of thoughts on that.
Yeah. Since we heard a lot about circular economy and waste management as a problem, and this has been a very intractable problem, and we are trying to explore, can students be the agents of change? And for this, we've been working with the municipal corporations in Amritsar and Ludhiana, and in both cities, 10 schools each, whom we are partnering with. And the idea is, one, understand what do students understand about waste, what do they know, and then can they be trained to segregate waste and take the learning home, because schools are the learning hubs, and basis this experience, scale up, this approach to more and more schools, first in Punjab and then say to the national level, because our theory of changes can we demonstrate some impact at the local level, and then what can policy do to actually make that happen. And just one interesting statistic we found, we did the survey with 900 students in these 20 schools. It was a baseline to, and where we asked them various questions, and almost 2/3 of them hadn't heard about composting, and 40% of them said they think plastic is biodegradable, and we were surprised. And one of the reasons is because much of the school curriculum does not cover waste management, for instance. And only those schools which have, more elite schools, so to say, which have eco clubs, there the students were more aware. And so one of the strategic sort of intervention here would be to introduce these topical issues in school curriculum, but then also training the students on the importance and actual thing of biodegradation. So we are also trying to see how multi-layer training can happen of the teachers, of the students, and then they become agents of change by taking it back to the community.
Thanks. I think that's a beautiful initiative. Over to you, Shalini. Being in Delhi, air quality, a big one. India loses almost $100 billion annually on air quality. You worked a lot around Delhi, and you also did a docu-series. So, like in a minute, if you could sum up the impact what Delhi goes through and certain suggestions or solutions.
I think in today's times when attention is a commodity, our very attentions are commodified, we could turn to our imagination and dream about the kind of world that we want, and then the kind of city that we want. I'm guessing many of you have children, the kind of future that you want your children to have, and work from there. And we start by cleaning up our own backyards. So that could involve getting sort of engaging closely with your RWAs, your immediate, the local elected representatives and all of that. I just personally I want to see young people coming up and reciting poetry. I just don't want them to talk about the subjects that they're talking about.
Thank you. Vivek, your learnings in terms of, because you're talking about cities and construction is happening all over India. I think 75% of the infra required by 2050 is yet to be built. So we're not getting away from that. It's going to happen. So you spoke about the shipping industry and some learnings which can be adapted or which we can actually case study around for the C&D waste which we generate as a country.
So quickly, I'll just mention two things here, data and communications, and just quickly summarizing in 1 minute. We really need data, and it's a time of AI, so you can't manage what you can't measure. So basically, that's something mantra that goes across, even managing built environment, managing waste, etc. So you have to have proper data metrics. And secondly, also with regard to our growth of the cities, communication and appropriate communication to the different set of stakeholders is really important, because that is something that we look at in impact investing also. When we want to develop new kinds of business models, you really want to look at how do you communicate with different set of stakeholders and different set of participants. So just to bring finally analogy which Ramnik you are mentioning is when you look at the construction sector and the deconstruction sector. So one of the India's industry which looks is ship recycling, which is happening extensively in the coast of Alang in Gujarat. So there they follow a systematic, rigorous procedure on how to deconstruct a ship. So can we think about such kind of a extensive deconstruction procedure for our buildings so that we are able to salvage the materials that we lose? And that is something, so synergy between different sectors, different thoughts really help us to improve the idea on conscious approach. Again, coming back to the thought that we started. A conscious approach requires synergy between different sectors, different thought process, different set of stakeholders, and I think I'll conclude over here, Ramnik. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivek. So, in a nutshell, if people here are aware of the Earth Overshoot Day, so Earth Overshoot Day last year was 1st of August. So basically what it says is that whatever the Earth can regenerate in 1 year, we have used up in 7 months. So 5 months we are in debt. So in 1970, there was nothing called the Earth Overshoot Day. So every decade, we take 1 month away from the planet, so we are in overdraft. So that's the reason the work he's suggesting is so important in terms of recirculating or upcycling, or making the virgin materials being in the ecosystem for much longer. So that's the perspective he brings on the circular ecosystem and resource efficiency. I think now we can take it offline. Thanks very much to the speakers here. It's been a great one. And just a couple of lines on the event. Thanks to the AndPurpose team. Also, this is a carbon neutral event, thanks to Grow Billion Trees and Indian Greens. So kudos to AndPurpose for stitching up a carbon neutral event. I think a big round of applause to them. And thanks again to everybody here. Great work. I think we can do more justice to their time offline, because I think we can learn a lot from what all the stakeholders here have done. Thanks again.